Hi, this is Tamara Kelly from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Irish Adventure Bag, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description or simply put into your search engine Moogly Irish Adventure Bag and it should take you right to the pattern. To make this bag, I used a USI 5.5mm crochet hook. This one is by Susan Bates. I also used 3 skeins of Patons Classic Wool Worsted. If you'd like to substitute, you need 582 yards of a worsted or Aran weight yarn. I used the Meadow colorway shown here. You'll also want to pick up a purse strap with rings or a strap and rings sold separately, however you'd like to finish off your bag. In addition, you'll need a yarn needle, scissors, and stitch markers, your usual crochet supplies. Let's take a closer look at the finished Irish Adventure Bag. And here we have the finished Irish Adventure Bag. The finished bag is approximately 10 inches by 10 inches and a couple of inches thick. Here you can see all the crochet portion. If I pull it down, you can see the rings. They are sewn into crocheted tabs and then attached to whatever style of handle you'd like. In the written pattern on the blog, you'll find links to both the rings and the handles that I used. Coming back to the crochet portion, we actually start by crocheting this front center section right here. We work the cables, the bobbles, and these post stitches along the sides. Then we crochet the tabs, the sides, and the bottoms of the bag right here. After that, we break our yarn only once for this pattern and reattach right here at the bottom to start crocheting up the back of the bag. Here you can see our second cable pattern. As we crochet up the back of the bag, we also slip stitch to those sides that we made before so that we create our bag seamlessly. There's no need to sew up the sides of the bag, but we still work flat the entire time. So we work up the back, slip stitching into the sides, working back and forth in rows, and then eventually, I'll straighten it out here, you can see that cable pattern moves on in to the cable pattern up here. When we're done slip stitching to the sides, we make what becomes the front flap of the bag. So we turn that back over here, straighten it back out. You can see there is our front flap. So you get to explore 3 different crochet cable patterns and some unique seaming in this Irish Adventure Bag. Let's get started. So we begin section 1, the front of our bag, with our first row. We're going to be making 37 foundation half double crochets. So to do that, I'm going to start with a slip knot on my hook, and then I'm going to chain 2. Different people make foundation half double crochets different ways, but here's how I like to make mine. After I chain 2, I'm going to yarn over and insert my hook under the underneath hump of the first chain I made. Then I yarn over and pull up a loop. This loop will become the chain at the bottom of our first foundation half double crochet. This will allow us to make the chains and the half double crochets all at the same time. So now we yarn over and pull a loop up through that chain. And now with 3 loops on our hook, we yarn over and pull through all 3 to finish our first half double crochet. That's how we make the first one. To continue with the rest of the row, we yarn over. Then we look for the V at the bottom of that first stitch we just made. That's acting as the chain. So we insert our hook right above that chain, yarn over, pull a loop up and through, and now this will become the chain at the bottom of our second stitch. So now we yarn over and pull a loop up through that chain, and now we just need to finish our half double crochet. Yarn over and pull through all 3. Let's make one more together. For the rest of our foundation half double crochets, we yarn over, look for the V at the bottom of the previous stitch, insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now we've got our active loop, our yarn over, and the loop that will be the chain at the bottom of this stitch. So we yarn over and pull a loop up through that chain, and then yarn over and pull through 3 to finish. That's our first 3, so you want to continue until you've made 37 foundation half double crochets. So this is what it should look like at the end of row 1. We have 37 foundation half double crochets. Now we're ready for row 2. So row 1 was our first right side row. For row 2, we'll make our first wrong side row. We start with a chain 1 and then a half double crochet in the very first stitch. I like to go ahead and put a stitch marker in the first stitch of each row. We want to maintain a stitch count of 37 stitches in each row. Now, when we're making the back, that won't include the slip stitches, and when we're making the sides and the bottom, of course, that'll be different, but in the main portions of the bag, we always want to have 37 stitches. So after we half double crochet in the first stitch, we're going to work a back post double crochet around the next stitch. So we yarn over. We can sort of open up our fabric a little bit right here to see that next stitch. Come in from behind, pop out to the other side, the back side of the fabric here around that stitch, yarn over, pull up our loop. There we go. We want to pull that through gently so we don't lose our yarn over. Then we can yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So there's our back post double crochet. Then we're going to bobble in the next stitch. Now, as part of maintaining our stitch count here, we want to make sure that when we work a post stitch around a stitch, or we work a post stitch later on that's tilted, that we skip the stitch behind it. We've worked around this stitch. We want to consider this stitch worked, so otherwise we'll start increasing. So we come to the next stitch of the row, which will be the third stitch, and that's where we're going to put our bobble. You can make bobbles a few different ways, but this one is a double crochet 5 together bobble. So we yarn over, go right into that next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2, but stop with 2 loops remaining on the hook, our active loop and the top loop from that double crochet that we've begun but not finished. Then we do it again, yarn over, go right back in that same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through 2. And we want to stop there, leaving the top loop of that stitch there as well. Then we need to do that 3 more times. We want to do it a total of 5 times all into that stitch. So there's 2. We go into that stitch, yarn over, pull up our loop, pull through 2. That's 3. Yarn over, go in, pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through 2. That's 4. Yarn over, go in the same stitch, yarn over, pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 2, and that's 5. And you can always double check. You'll have 5 double crochets started when you have 6 loops on your hook, the active loop and then the top of each of those 5 double crochets. To finish your bobble, we're going to yarn over and pull through all those loops. To make it a little bit easier, notice how I have pointed the hook portion of my crochet hook down towards my stitches. As I pull through, I'm also going to lift up with my hook in my right hand here, or in my hook hand rather, to create space in all those stitches so that as I pull through, it's easy to glide the hook right through. Then I want to make sure to sort of push that bobble out and away from me as I make my next stitch. That will help it pop out on the right side. Remember, we're on a wrong side row right now, so our bobbles are going to poke out away from us. So after we make our bobble, we half double crochet in the next 31 stitches. And part of getting this bobble to poke out nice and bobbly is to make that next half double crochet just a little bit tight. So we want to yarn over, go right into that next stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through all 3. And as I do that, notice how I kind of pinch down on that bobble. I pull through all those 3 loops, and it really just helps that bobble poke out and puff out on the right side of the fabric. That's our first one. I've got 30 more to go. That should take us to where there are just 3 stitches left remaining at the end here for row 2. So after making those 31 half double crochets, there are just 3 stitches left to work into to finish up row 2. So to do that, we want to mirror image what we did at the beginning. So we start now with our bobble. Yarn over, go into that next stitch, pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 2. And then we do that a total of 5 times. So there's my second one. Straighten out the yarn a little bit there. And 3, and 4, and 5. You can always double check by making sure we have 6 loops on our hook. Then we yarn over, point that hook down, add a little tension, and pull nice and easy all the way through. Our next stitch will be the back post double crochet. So you can kind of pull open your stitches a little bit there to find your opening. Go in from the back around the stitch, yarn over, pull that loop up and through, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, and then finish off the whole row with a half double crochet in the very last stitch. There we go. And that's the end of row 2. For row 3, we're going to start again with a chain 1 and a half double crochet in the first stitch. Since we're beginning another row, I'll grab another stitch marker and put a stitch marker in the top of that very first stitch. There we are. Then we're going to front post double crochet in the next stitch. Now, before, this was a back post double crochet, so now we can just look for the post of that stitch itself. On this side, it should be facing us forward, so it's easy to just slide our hook right under the post. Then we can yarn over and pull up our loop, yarn over and pull through 2. There we go, and yarn over and pull through 2. Now, on this side, we won't be making bobbles. We only make our bobbles from the wrong side, so they push to the front of the bag. So after making our front post double crochet, we half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. We still want to make sure that we skip the top of that stitch we made our post stitch around. So this should go in the top of the bobble for the first one. So there's 1, 2, and 3. There we are. And as I say, you can always flip your work over and double check and make sure you've just skipped the top of the one stitch that had the post stitch. There we are. Then we're going to front post double treble around the 4th and 5th stitches of row 1. So this is where we start really creating those beautiful cables. So let's take a look at the different parts of those instructions. The first thing is front post double treble. Well, we've seen a front post. That means we come from the front. Double treble means we are going to yarn over 3 times. We yarn over once for a double, twice for a treble, 3 times for a double treble. I know the terminology is kind of strange. They didn't ask me when they named the stitches. After we've got our 3 yarn overs on there, we want to come down and find those 4th and 5th stitches of row 1. Now, we know our bobble was worked into the 3rd stitch of row 1, so that tells us right away we can kind of open up our stitches, say the bobble was right there, so that means the next stitch is right here. So we can come back here and we're going to go in from the front because it's a front post stitch. We come from the front, wrap our hook around the back of that stitch and bring it back to the front of our fabric. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Now, because of all those yarn overs, we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 several times. So we do it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times total to get to the top of that stitch. We always come back down to just having 1 loop left on our hook. So that was around the 4th stitch. Now we need to do it around the 5th, one right next to it. So once again, we yarn over 3 times. Always yarn over towards us. Find the next stitch there, down in row 1. Go in from the front, go around the body of that stitch, bring the hook back to the front of our fabric, yarn over and pull our loop up, and then yarn over and pull through 2 until we come back down to 1 loop on our hook. Pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through. There we are. Then we half double crochet in the next stitch. Now, we need to note that we've just made 2 post stitches. So when we look at the top of the previous row, even though they were anchored over here, we want to make sure to skip 2 stitches in the previous row. We want to maintain our stitch count. If I went in right here, I would have just added 2 stitches. Since I just made 2 stitches, we're going to skip 2 back here, 1 and 2. So that means this next one here, this 3rd one, is where I'm going to put that half double crochet. So I want to yarn over, sort of mark it with my thumb there. I can go right there and make that half double crochet. There we go. Pull that right on through. Now I'm going to front post double treble around the 11th and 12th stitches of row 1. We're jumping right into it with this really twisty cable pattern that we saw on the inside of the bag. So again, we know it's a front post double treble. So we know to begin, we need to yarn over 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And it's a front post, so we're going to be coming from the front of our fabric. So now we need to find stitches 11 and 12. 11 is first. We can come right back down here to row 1, and we know the last place we worked around was the 5th one, so we can just count our way over. So there was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 is the first one we go right around. So we come from the front of our fabric, right around that post of the 11th stitch. You notice how I just bring my loop of my yarn right over the front of that stitch there. And very carefully pull that loop up and through. Sometimes the hook gets caught. It's okay if you have to kind of drop that stitch and try again. You want to get that loop to pull through nice and clean. Then we yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and finally yarn over and pull through 2. So that was our 11th. Now we need to do the 12th. Yarn over 3 times. Now that we know that one, we know it's just the very next one. Go right around the body of that stitch, call that the post, pull up our loop, and work them off in pairs. There we go. So you can see we've already got some angles going there in our cables. Now we're going to half double crochet in the next 6 stitches. So let me get my yarn to stop spinning on me here. There we go. Straighten it out a little bit. So half double crochet in the next 6 stitches. We just made 2 more of these post stitches, so we need to flip it over here and look. Now we need to make sure we skip 2 behind there as well. So it's going to be that stitch where we're going to put our first of those 6 half double crochets. So I'll yarn over, double check, mark the one I want to go into there with my thumb, so I can go right into it with that first one, and then just double check, make sure. Yep, we just skipped 2, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops, let me try that one again. There we go, 5 and 6. And then we go back to our instructions. Now we need to front post double treble around the 20th and 21st stitches of row 1. So we yarn over 3 times. We know this right here. If we come back here, this stitch was number 12. So now we need to find 20. So there's 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So that's the stitch we want to go right around from the front. Carefully pull up that loop and work them off again in pairs. We're down to our 1 loop there, so now we do the next one. Yarn over 3 times. So that would have been 20. Next is 21. There we go. Get that loop up there and work this one off in pairs of loops. There we go. After that, we work a half double crochet in the next stitch. So let's go ahead and yarn over, skip those next 2 stitches because we just made 2 post stitches. Go into the stitch after that with our half double crochet. And now we're going to do a cross. We're going to front post double treble around the 17th and 18th stitches of row 1. So we're going to be crossing right over those front post double trebles that we made before. We're just going to work right in front of them as if they were any other stitches here. So let's go ahead and yarn over 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And now we need to look for stitch 17. Let's come back here. We know this one was 12, so we can go 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, right there. Count from whichever point makes it easiest for you. You can see it gets a little squishy here, but I just want to go right around that stitch and I can push everything else out of the way. All of the rest of this, we can just fold our fabric however we need to. Yarn over and pull that loop up and through. And now you can see just the loops we need to work with are here at the top. Yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, twice more till you get back down to that 1 loop on our hook. Now, that would have been 17, so now we need 18. Yarn over 3 times. Come right back down here. We know that was 17, so we can just go right for that next one. And again, we can just pinch down and push all the rest of that fabric out of our way. It's just yarn, it bends, it'll come right back. Now we've just got the loops that we need to deal with. We yarn over and pull through 2, all the way until we're back down to that single loop. There we go. And now you can see you've made your first cabled cross right there. Then we're going to half double crochet in the next 6 stitches. Sounds familiar, right? Working our way over to repeat this in our pattern. So now we're going to yarn over first. We just made 2 more post stitches since the last time we half double crocheted. So we want to make sure to skip those next 2 stitches and go into the stitch after that. So there's our first half double crochet, and then we need 5 more. All right, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 total. We need 5 and 6. There we go. Then we are going to front post double treble around the 26th and 27th stitches of row 1. Lots of counting in this first row of cables here. So now we are going to yarn over 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And let's come back and look at these. This one would have been the 21st stitch of row 1. If we can go back and look at our instructions when we made these, we landed in the 21st stitch there. Now we're looking for the 26th. So we've got 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. So that tells us where to insert our hook. Yarn over and pull up our loop, and same thing. Work them off in pairs until you're back down to 1. So that would be our 26th. Now we need the 27. So same thing. Yarn over 3 times. Come from the front because it's a front post stitch. Pull up our loop and work them off in pairs. All right. Then we half double crochet in the next stitch. So again, we'll go ahead and put our yarn over on there. Make sure to skip the next 2 because we just made 2 post stitches. Half double crochet in the stitch after that. And then we are going to front post double treble around the 33rd and 34th stitches of row 1. So let's yarn over 3 times. We know that this one was the 27th. So we've got 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. It's going to take us right up next to our bobble here. So we've got our 33rd front post double treble crochet, and now we need the 34th. Pull up a little bit more yarn. There we are. Yarn over 3 times. Find that very next stitch there. Yarn over and pull up our loop. Work those off in pairs. Oh, mine got a little tangled there. That's all right. We just do it again. Yarn over 3 times. Find that stitch again. Try and pull it without snagging the yarn. Sometimes easier said than done. There we go. All right, there it goes. Now we can work it off in pairs. Yarn over and pull through 2 until you're back down to 1 stitch. So now you can see how our stitch pattern is forming. We've got 2 bits coming together here. We've got a cross here. We've mirrored that side here. So now we just need to go ahead and finish up row 3. We're going to half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. So let's yarn over and then come back here. Make sure we skip the 2 for those 2 post stitches we just made. That puts us in the stitch right before our puff stitch here. So there's 1 and 2 and 3. There we are. Just double check and make sure I got all those stitches skipped right back there. Then we front post double crochet around the next stitch. You can see there's 2 stitches left. That's right where we want to be. It's a little hard to find when it's this very first one, but there's that back post double crochet we made before. We want to go right under it for a front post double crochet. And then of course we finish it off with a half double crochet in that very last stitch. There we are. And that is what it should look like at the end of row 3. Row 4 is going to be just like most of the rest of your wrong side rows. We start with a chain 1 and half double crochet in the very first stitch. Just got to get my hook into the right spot there. There we go. We'll go ahead and mark that first stitch again. Then we want to back post double crochet around the front post double crochet of the previous row. Now that we've got those sort of lined up and happening, it's going to be a lot easier to find that post to come from behind and go right around the post from the previous row. Yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And then of course we're on the wrong side, so we want to make sure and get our bobble, skip the top of that stitch that we put our post around and put the bobble in the next stitch. Again, you want to start 5 double crochets, but don't finish any of them here until we finish them all together. You know, when you've got enough, when you've got 6 loops left on your hook, just like we have here, yarn over and pull through. And then don't forget, we half double crochet in the next 31 stitches. Now, a note about this, when you are half double crocheting from the wrong side here on across this row, we don't want to drop down and work into the tops of those stitches that we missed due to our post stitches before. We really want to look at the top of our fabric, that line of V's, whether it's the top of a post stitch or the top of a half double crochet, it's all the same. And we're going to be working under these top 2 loops of these stitches right across the top, not dropping down to any of the previous rows. From this side, we want to treat them exactly the same, whether it's a post stitch or a half double crochet. We just half double crochet under those top 2 loops. We'll work our way across here until we get to those last 3 stitches. And then of course we need to finish it up with a bobble, a back post double crochet, and finally a half double crochet. So to begin row 5, we start again with a chain 1 and a half double crochet in our very first stitch. Again, I like to use the stitch markers just to help me make sure that I maintain my stitch count. Then we're going to front post double crochet around the next stitch. This will be pretty standard throughout the entire pattern. There we go. Then we half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. So again, make sure you skip the top of that post stitch there. And we do 1, 2, and 3 half double crochets. Then, let's straighten out my yarn a little bit here. We are going to skip 3 stitches and front post double treble around the next 2 post stitches. So, if we look at what we're doing when we skip the next 3 stitches, we're going to be passing over these first 2 post stitches right here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to front post double treble, so we yarn over 3 times. Front post, we know we're bringing our hook to the front of our fabric. Back post, we would need to bring it behind. So we stay in front. We're going to jump all the way over to these next 2 post stitches. So now you can see just how easy it is to slide your hook right under the post of that previous stitch. Once we've got the sort of pattern established with cables, they're so much easier to make and find. So there's our first one. Then we're going to do the same thing around the next one. So we yarn over 3 times, go right under that next post stitch there. There we are. So now we've got that big crossover happening right there. Then we are going to half double crochet in the 3rd skipped stitch. So we know it's a half double crochet, so we'll go ahead and yarn over. Now we're going to flip over our work again and just look at the top of that previous row. Here are the 3 stitches that we skipped. 1, 2, 3. So that 3rd one right there, I'll get it marked with that other thumb, is where we want to insert our hook. So we've got our yarn over in there, we insert our hook and put our half double crochet. You can go back and check and make sure we've just skipped over 2 stitches right there. Then we're going to front post double treble around each of the 2 skipped post stitches. So that's these 2 guys back here. So now we yarn over 3 times again. And we always still when we work crochet this direction, when we're going around cables, we do the same thing. We always go the same direction. So we want to come back to that first one we skipped. And again, you can fold over your fabric if you need to, but we just slide the hook right under that post, yarn over and pull up our loop. There's just the loops we need. Yarn over and pull through 2 until you've worked them all off. There we go. And then we do the same thing around that next skipped one right there. Yarn over 3 times. Slide our hook right under that post. Yarn over and pull up our loop. And then work them off in pairs. There we are. Then we're going to half double crochet in the next 4 stitches. Now we just made 2 more post stitches, so that means we need to skip those 2 stitches that were next of the previous row and come to the next one. So there's the first one. Let's see, we need 4. So there's 2, 3, pull up a little bit more yarn here. Got a little tangled on my written pattern. Believe it or not, folks, I do not have this one memorized, not with all these cables. There we go. One more. There is our 4 half double crochets. Perfect. And now we begin again. You can see that kind of took care of this bit of the cabling. Now we're going to be tackling this center portion. So now we are going to front post double treble around the next 2 post stitches. And if you look back at our cross right here, I don't know if it's probably easier actually to see with my hand behind it, we've got the tops of those first 2 right there. That's where we're aiming for right now. So let's yarn over 3 times because they're double trebles. They're front post, so we keep our hook in front and we find the first one of those cables right there, the first one of those post stitches. Work right off of that stitch. And then yarn over 3 times and do the next one right there. Work those off in pairs as well. And then we're going to half double crochet in the next 5 stitches. So we go ahead and put our yarn over on there. We can flip our work over. We need to skip 2 because we just made 2. Make sure we go to the next one. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we front post double treble around the 2 right here, right below us. So to do that, we yarn over 3 times. And again, we want to make sure we always go the same direction. The first one, work all those loops off in pairs. And then the second one, just make sure we get all those yarn overs on there. There we go. So now for this one, the first one, we started our cross. This one, we're expanding a little bit. So next, we're going to half double crochet in the next 4 stitches. So we want to make sure to yarn over and skip 2 stitches behind the 2 post stitches we just made. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see that's bringing us up here to our last section of cables. So now we are going to skip 3 stitches and front post double treble around the next 2. So just kind of like what we did here at the beginning, we're going to skip over the next 3 and come over to these 2. So we yarn over 3 times, find the first ones of these furthest away pair here, work those loops off 2 at a time, yarn over 3 times, go right to the next one, work that stitch on off your hook, and then we are going to half double crochet in that 3rd skipped stitch. So I've got my yarn over on there already. We come over, we had the 3 that we skipped before we worked these, so we skipped 2 because we just made 2 post stitches, go to that 3rd one, put our half double crochet right there. We basically want it to land sort of right in the middle of that crossing of the post stitches. And then we front post double treble around each of those 2 skipped stitches. So we yarn over 3 times, and we come back over here to the ones that we skipped. We go right around that first one, work off our loops, You can see I really just go ahead and bend that fabric wherever it makes it easiest to get in there. Yarn over 3 times, find that next one. And you can go ahead and really pull your fabric apart and look for those different post stitches. It won't hurt it. There we go. And now we've made the cross here for our third section. So now we want to half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. Make sure again to skip those 2 behind the 2 post stitches we just made. So there's 1 and 2 and 3. There we are. That third one should go right in the top of the puff stitch. Due to the way the stitches lean, it seems like it's to the side of it here, but that's actually the top of the puff stitch. So then we want our front post double crochet around the post stitch below. So we can maintain that line all the way up each side. And then of course, a half double crochet in that very last stitch, just as we've been doing all along. And that's what it should look like at the end of row 5. Row 6 is just going to be exactly like the rest of our wrong side rows. Chain 1, back post double crochet, bobble, half double crochet 31. Again, make sure you go into the tops of the stitches of the previous row, not the tops of any stitches that you might have skipped. And then at the end, make sure that you get your bobble, back post double crochet, and half double crochet. And I'll see you when it's time for row 7. Now let's make row 7 together. We start with the chain 1 and half double crochet in the first stitch. As I say, pretty much all our rows will begin this way. It's just when we're doing something special. There we go. Then we always want to remember to work a post stitch around the front, so it's a front post stitch around that next post stitch there. There we go. And then we're going to half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. Make sure we end up on top of that bobble there. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Then for our row 7 pattern, we're going to begin by working a front post treble around the next 2 post stitches. Now this is a front post treble, not a front post double treble, so you are going to need to pay attention to the written pattern as you make this. For FPTR, front post treble, we just yarn over twice. Then it says around the next 2 post stitches, so we need to look at our work from the row below. You can see here, again, we've got those 2 post stitches peeking out. Those are the closest to our hook, so these are the next 2. We go right around that first one for a front post stitch and yarn over it and work it off in pairs. This time, it only takes 3 times to do it because we had 1 less yarn over. So we do that again around the next stitch, yarn over twice, find the very next post stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop, and yarn over and pull through 2 3 times. There we go. Then we are going to half double crochet in the next stitch. So once again, we want to yarn over, make sure we skip those 2 because we just made 2 post stitches, and half double crochet in the very next stitch. Again, you can see as a little visual clue how this is lining up in the middle of this whole cable section. Then we're going to front post treble around the next 2 post stitches here. So we yarn over twice. Our next 2 are just right straight down here. We go around that first one, pull up our loop, work those off in pairs, yarn over twice, and find the next one. Yarn over and pull through 2 until we get back to the top. So you can see how that cable pattern there is really starting to shape up. Then we're going to half double crochet in the next 4 stitches. So we yarn over, make sure to skip the 2 behind the post stitches we just made, and half double crochet in the next 4. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. There we go. Oop, almost had it. I looked away at my instructions and lost the stitch. There we go. All right, now we're going to front post treble around the next 2 post stitches. So we can look at our work, find the next 2 post stitches we come to, and there they are. So we yarn over twice, go under the first one, pull up our loop, and finish our stitch. Yarn over twice, and go right to the next one. Then we are going to half double crochet in the next 5 stitches. We've got a really wide break in between these 2 sets. So we yarn over, make sure we skip the 2 behind the post stitches we just made. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There we go. Then we front post treble around the next 2 post stitches. Yarn over twice, and we just drop straight down. You can see these are just the next ones we come to. Yarn over twice and go to the next one. You might notice when I'm making tall stitches like front post trebles or double trebles, I tend to keep my loops really close together on the hook. Then, as I work those loops off, I tend to pinch the stitch, the post of the stitch, if you will, with my non-hook hand. I find this helps keep my post stitches from becoming too leggy or having too big of a top. So if you find you're having trouble with that, it's something you can try. After we finished that, we are going to half double crochet in the next 4 stitches. So I'll go ahead and yarn over, skip the next 2 because we just made 2 post stitches, and half double crochet in the next 4. So there's 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. There we are. Then we go back to, if you're following along with the written pattern, this section with the asterisk. So we can do here what we did back here. We begin with front post treble around each of the next 2 right here. So remember that we yarn over only twice for a front post treble. There's our next one. There we go. And then we are going to half double crochet in the next stitch. Right there, of course, we want to make sure that we skip the 2 stitches behind the stitches we just made. There we go. Then front post treble around the next 2, yarn over twice, come right to that very next one. Work our way through that stitch. And then, of course, do the same thing to the next stitch. There we go. And then we have finished that second repeat of the section between the asterisks, and we move on to half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. So we yarn over, skip the 2 stitches behind the stitches we just made. There's 1, and 2, and 3. And then maintain our symmetry. We're going to front post double crochet around that post stitch in the previous row, and finish it off, of course, with another half double crochet. There we go. Now, the rest of section 1 is all spent following this pattern. There are a few more rows before you begin the repeat, but you just keep maintaining the stitch count of 37. Most of the rows are going to be different through row 15. Of course, your wrong side rows are always the same. We're just half double crocheting through the middle with those few extra stitches on the end. Don't forget your bobbles. And then rows 17 through 26 will be a repeat of rows 5 through 14. So let's take another quick look at section 1 on the finished bag. Here is the front section of the finished bag. If I pull it down here, you can see how it just continues. And here, right here, you can see there are those first few rows that we've been making together. We're just working our way right up along this pattern. You can see how they switch out, but really it all repeats. We work our way straight up here, and then it's time to add the tabs, sides, and bottoms. And we do that in section 2. When we get to the end of section 1, we finish up at the top here of the inside front portion of the bag. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take off here and make these long tabs that we'll use to sew down the rings, and then crochet down along the side of our section, across the bottom of row 1, up the other side, and create the other tab. We work back and forth for a few rows to create the sides, bottom, and tabs all in one section. So let's do that together now. Here I have a small sample meant to represent section 1 of our bag. You can see it's quite a bit smaller. I didn't include the cables in the middle, but we've still got the bobbles and those post stitches along the sides. And this will allow me to demonstrate section 2. Section 2 begins row 1 with a chain of 11. Now again, that's for the full-sized bag. I'm working a smaller sample here, so this is going to look like a very large tab. Let's go ahead and chain 11 together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. After we chain 11, we skip the chain closest to the hook, this one right here that we just made, and half double crochet in each remaining chain. I really like to work into the back hump of the chain. I think it just leaves a nicer finished edge to our tab. So since we chained 11 and we skipped the one closest to the hook and half double crochet in each remaining chain, that should give us a total of 10 half double crochets after we've worked into each one of these chains. This part of the bag really exemplifies one of my favorite things about crochet, its ability to just take off in any new direction since there's only the one active loop. So we're just continuing to crochet our half double crochets here along these chains. Again, we should have a total of 10 by the time we work in that very last one here right next to our bag. I believe I am there, so we can double check our work. We should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 half double crochets. You can see I just went right into that very last chain right there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to half double crochet in each side of each row, essentially. If you make the full-size bag, not this little swatch here, there are 27 rows here that we have crocheted in section 1. So as we half double crochet evenly along the side, we can put a half double crochet in the side of each row. We'll start in row 27 and end up back down at row 1. Now, working to the side is kind of a personal thing. Different people like to do it different ways. Some people really like to split the stitches. Some people like to go into the same space as the top of the stitch of each row. How you do it really is up to you. The main thing is to get 27 stitches evenly spaced all down the side of your rows here. So you can see here on my little swatch, I'm just going kind of quickly here, but I just want to make sure to put a half double crochet in the side of each row until I've worked all the way back down to the side of row 1. So I'll see you when we get to the side of row 1. So at this point, you should have 37 stitches, the 10 stitches of the tab plus 27 more along the sides of section 1 here, or at least this first side. Then what we're going to do is we don't want to increase at all, but we want to turn and half double crochet in the bottom of each stitch of row 1. This is one of the fun things about using the foundation half double crochet. It gives us 2 loops to work under as if it were the top of any stitch rather than the bottom of the stitch. So since we had 37 stitches across here, remember we had 37 stitches in each row, we should have 37 stitches starting here with this next one until we get all the way across. So we've got 10 for the tab, 27 along the side, and 37 here across the bottom. And again, you can just half double crochet in the bottom of each one of your stitches that you made in row 1. So after you've half double crocheted in the bottom of each stitch of row 1, then we need to work our way up the other side of the bag. Again, there were 27 rows, so we want to make sure to put a stitch in the side of each row for 27 stitches along this final side of the bag. Then all we need to do is make our second tab. So here I've worked up the other side of our bag, and now we need to repeat what we did here for the tab, but we're not going to chain and then work back into the chain because that would be like starting another row. It would create an offset between our 2 tabs and we want them to be identical. So instead what we're going to do is extend this row with 10 foundation half double crochet stitches. Now we made those in row 1, but to make this first one, it's a little different since we're working into a row here that's already established and not just into the foundation half double crochet itself. So to begin extending our row with foundation half double crochet, we yarn over and we're going to insert our hook the same place we put that very last stitch, the last stitch as we worked up our side. So wherever you inserted that one, we insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now from here, we can treat it just like any other foundation half double crochet. We yarn over and pull up through the chain, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. So now we've added a stitch to the end of that row. There's 1, we need to add 9 more. Because remember, on the first tab, we chained 11, but that gave us 10 half double crochets. So we want to have 10 half double crochets on this side as well. Once you've made that first one by going into the previous stitch like that, it's just like when we were making row 1. Keep making those until you have 10 total foundation half double crochets here at the end of this row. Okay, so here you can see I've added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 foundation half double crochets to our row. So let's go over the counts for this row one more time together because this part is really important. We chained 11 and worked back in for 10 half double crochets on this first tab. Then we worked 27 half double crochets down along the side of our bag right here. Then we worked 37 across the bottom of row 1, 27 up the other side, and then extended with 10 more. This adds up to 111 stitches. And for the next 3 rows, we simply chain 1 and half double crochet in each one of these stitches across. So we do that for 4 total rows to create these bag wide tabs, to create the sides of our bag, and to create the bottom of our bag. At the end of row 4, you're going to place stitch markers in stitches 37 and 75. This will frame out 37 stitches in between across the bottom of the bag. And that is the only place where we break our yarn in preparation for section 3. So if we go back to the finished bag and look at the section we just made, you can see it right here. Here is where we chained and worked back into those chains, and then just crocheted right down the side, across the bottom, up the other side, extended with foundation half double crochets, and then worked back and forth for a total of 4 rows. Again, when you place your stitch markers, they're going to be right here on the corners so that you've got 37 stitches in between. It'll be stitch 37 and stitch 75. Now, as I say, at the end of section 2 is the one place where we cut our yarn. We're going to rejoin using these stitch markers down here at the bottom of our stitching. Now again, this is my small demo piece. We would have more rows and more stitches in the full-sized one, but I wanted to focus on how to do the second section with the slip stitches to really inform you how to do this. The rest of the cabling is just following more cabling patterns. So now we're going to begin with section 3, and we're going to be joining from the right side of the bag. So you want to make sure that your cables and your bobbles are facing up when you lay it flat in front of you. Then we're going to grab our new yarn, and we're going to be joining to the marked stitch number 75. Now that's going to be the one right here on your crochet side. If you're right-handed, it'll be on your right. If you're left-handed, it will be on your left. When we finished off that row, we marked our stitches. This is the one we want to go ahead and be joining to. So we're going to join to that first marked stitch right there with a slip stitch. So you can go ahead and leave the marker in there if you'd like to. I like to usually for the first couple rows, just help me make sure I'm in the right spot and I don't need to pull out and count again. And there we go. We've just joined right nice and tightly to that slip stitch. Then we're going to half double crochet in the next 37 stitches. So we don't want to chain 1 here. We just want to go right to that next stitch and start putting in our half double crochets. Now, as you may recall, as I said here at the end of section 2, there would be 37 stitches in between these stitch markers. So obviously on my small representative sample, I don't have quite as many, but you should have 27 half double crochets you can make before you get to the next stitch marker. After you've half double crocheted those 37 stitches, that has brought you to the next marked stitch. Also happens to be stitch 37. I know that's confusing, so just think of this one as your second marked stitch here on the right side. So when we get to that stitch, we want to slip stitch in that marked stitch. And then we're going to make these slip stitches nice and tight. We don't need to work back into those slip stitches at any time. So again, we're not going to count our slip stitches at the beginning and end. We're back to having 37 stitches in each row. So that is the stitch count we want to maintain. So now we're ready for row 2. And it's going to be a wrong side row, but it's going to be a little different as well. We're going to go ahead and start here with a chain 1. We're going to go ahead and turn. We're going to be working from the inside of the bag now on our wrong side rows. And as you go, you can flip it inside, outside, however you make it more comfortable for you. Again, we're not going to be working into the slip stitch. We are going to turn and half double crochet in that first half double crochet right there. So if you'd like to go ahead and put stitch markers in those stitches as well, you might find that helpful. So there is our first one. We half double crochet in the first stitch. Then we want to back post double crochet around the next stitch. We're going to start reestablishing all those stitches that we did along the sides here. So we can kind of pull that open right there, find where it's comfortable to go right around that stitch. Make our first back post double crochet for this row. Then of course we want to bobble, so we make sure we skip the top of that next stitch and come to the third stitch there and begin our bobble. Let's see, did I skip one? I think I accidentally did not skip one. Let's see, let's make sure here. Yep, I had one try and slip past me. There we go. We go to the next stitch and make our bobble. We always do the same bobble for this pattern. Start 5 double crochets. Let's see, that's 4. We need one more. I always just check to make sure I've got 5 loops there. And then, of course, half double crochet in the next 31. We're on our wrong side row, so we're just reestablishing what we did in section 1. The only difference is we're going to be joining here in section 3 to the sides as we go so that we don't have to seam our bag when it's all finished. Just those little tabs to sew down the rings. So since I have a different number here, I'm going to be getting to the end of my row pretty quickly. Let's see, there is my slip stitch. 1, 2, 3. Got one more stitch there. So after 31 stitches, you should have just those 3 stitches left, where of course we want to put our bobble. Pull up some more of my yarn here. Begin those 5 double crochets. 3, 4, and 5. Double check. Yep, there we go. And then, of course, back post double crochet right around that next stitch. Wiggle that through as best we can. There we go. And then half double crochet in the very last stitch right there. There we are. Now, what we're going to do as we've worked all the way across here, we do have, of course, to join to the side. So next we are going to slip stitch in the next stitch. So not the one we slip stitched in before. This is where it's helpful to have left that first stitch marker. We saw that's where we slip stitched before. We can go ahead and kind of push it to the back. I think will probably be easiest. Then we go to the next stitch. So you can see this is where we slip stitch to begin. We want to come to the next stitch and slip stitch in there. We want to make sure we're working our way up the sides as we go. Then we chain 1 and slip stitch in the next stitch on the bag side. We also, just like a turning chain or a turning ladder, we need to chain 1 to move up, but we want to make sure that we stay attached. So then we are finished with row 2 and ready to begin row 3 back on the right side of our bag. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove this stitch marker. It's going to be more in the way than not. And I want to again make sure that I skip over these slip stitches here along the side and make sure to work into that first stitch as I begin row 3. So we're going to start with a half double crochet in the first stitch. And I think now I will go ahead and start marking the first stitch of each of these rows. And by that I do mean the half double crochets, not the slip stitches. Then we front post double crochet around that next post. You can see that sticking out and waiting for us right there. Like so. And then we are going to start beginning our cable pattern for the back. So I don't have quite as many stitches, but we'll do a couple of them here. We're supposed to half double crochet in the next 9. I'm going to make sure I skip that stitch behind the post, and I'll just do a couple here since I don't have as many stitches to work with. And then we can look at the stitch pattern that we do in row 3 here of section 3. We front post treble around the next 2 stitches of row 1. Now we want to remember that we are working row 3, so we don't want to drop down to this row, the very previous row. We want to drop down to the row before that. So for our front post treble, we yarn over twice, and we would just find the next 2 stitches. Now again, I haven't done 9 stitches first, but let's just talk about how to find that next stitch. If we look at our stitching right here, you can see if I were just work this as a normal stitch, there's the top 2 loops I would go into. And we can follow that down to see that is the base of the stitch right there. It might actually be easier to see if I pull my fingers out of the way. There's the top of the stitch. Those 2 vertical loops would be the bottom of the stitch. And you can see the space right there that I'm blocking back and forth with my finger there. That is the space that stitch was worked into. So that means it was worked into the top of this stitch right here. So that would be our target stitch as our quote-unquote next stitch. So that is the stitch we would go around for a front post treble. Pull up our loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. For this particular pattern, we then half double crochet, we then do the front post treble around the next stitch as well. We front post treble around the next 2 stitches of row 1. So there's the first one, and then we do it around this next one. We don't want to do 1 stitch around both of those stitches. It's 1 stitch around each of those stitches right there. Then we half double crochet in the next 3 stitches. Again, we want to make sure that we skip the stitches behind the post stitches we just made. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And then front post treble around the next 2 stitches of row 1. Again, this one is just setting up the next stitch pattern. And if we look at it on the finished bag, right here, you can see this is what we're doing right here in these stitches. We're just setting up to start doing more of that stitching just like we were doing before, but in a slightly different order to create a different look. So on our tiny little swatch here, let's just go ahead and half double crochet until we get close to the other end here so we can figure out the whole slip stitching thing and see a little bit more of that. So I know that I am going to stitch here right past my bobble. So that's the stitch before the bobble. It always looks like that one wants to be the top of the bobble, but it's actually this one. Then front post double crochet, of course, around that last post stitch there. Half double crochet in the last stitch. Oh, there's one of my hairs. I always manage to get one of my hairs in each project, at least. There we go. And now we have finished that portion of the stitching. So now what we need to do is make sure to slip stitch in the next stitch. So again, we have here marked the last slip stitch we did on this side. We can push that out of the way and make sure we go to the next stitch along the side. We want, again, to make sure that we continue working our way up. So once I've got that slip stitch in there, I can go ahead and move that stitch marker right on out of the way. And then we chain 1, slip stitch in the next stitch along the side of the bag. That works as our turning chain. And then we're able to turn and work back across the previous row. And that, you can see, is already working. We're pulling up here to do section 2. Every time we slip stitch and move up the side and then crochet back across our bag, we're going to continue joining along the sides with a slip stitch, chain 1, slip stitch, and then turn and work back. And in this manner, we won't have to do any seaming. And we work another total 27 rows here until the back is the same height as the front. So here we are again with our finished bag, and here you can see section 3. And if you look very closely, you might be able to spot those slip stitches worked right along the side. You can see just how well that blends in and really creates that beautiful seamless look. So we work section 2 with our cable pattern. Again, mostly the same stitches. We're just mixing up the order a little bit to create a new pattern. When we get through 27 rows here across the back, you can see that will leave the tabs still free. Just brings us to row 27, so it's the same height as the front of our bag. And then we're going to stop doing the slip stitching on our sides. We don't have to break the yarn unless you don't want a front flap. If you're someone who prefers a more open style tote, then you can stop right at the end of section 3 with 27 stitches, and you'll just have a reversible bag with 2 great patterns. However, if you do want to do the top and front flap of the bag, then you'll need to work section 4. Section 4 just continues on. All we need to do is we stop doing the slip stitching in the sides and go right back to working in rows just like we were in section 1. Our stitch pattern expands a little bit with those same types of post stitches, front post stitches. We only have our back post stitches. Remember when we're doing our wrong side rows, we go right back to having our wrong side rows be quite simple. You can see this is what it looks like from the inside. But even though this one looks more complicated, you can see it's just more of those crosses, just like we were doing before. So then we just continue working in rows. Don't have to worry about the slip stitches anymore. Make this beautiful stitch pattern long enough to be a front flap. And then we go ahead and finish it off. There's no side seaming or edging or anything else you need to do. Just work one final row and be done. You can make this front flap shorter if you prefer, if you like something that just folds over part of the way. You can add a loop for a button. You could even add magnetic or snap clasps inside this front flap if you wanted to. How you finish the bag really is up to you and is your chance to personalize the bag and make it your own. You may also want to line the bag. You can see it's relatively solid, but it certainly wouldn't stop a small crochet hook from falling through. So lining the bag is optional and up to you. I chose to leave mine unlined for now because I was bringing on a trip to teach it, and I wanted to make sure everybody could see all parts of the bag. But you can see all the cables are really right here on the outside of the bag, looking beautiful and ready for you to make all your own. Now, I almost forgot one last bit, the final assembly. After you've finished all your crocheting, we are going to have 2 tiny seams that you will want to sew. You can see here are those tabs. Those long 10 half double crochet length tabs. Be sure to slip the ring for your handle, whether it's attached to your handle already or you have the rings and handle separately. Be sure to slip those onto your tab here before you sew it down. You can just fold that edge there of the tab itself right on over and sew it right to the inside of the bag. Of course, you'll want to do that on both sides. I really like having rings like this where the handle detaches so I can take the handle off, put the bag in a lingerie bag and throw it in the washer. And I'd probably air dry it, but certainly throw it in the washer if needed. But again, you can personalize it however you like. So with just those 2 little seams, then you'll finally be finished with your Irish Adventure bag. And that's how to crochet the Irish Adventure bag. Don't forget, you can get this pattern free on mooglyblog.com. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.